Buckeyes. Okay, but yeah, this is important. Yeah, right. I'm from Lorain, Ohio, but you know, so Phil Mendelson, I remember Phil when he was a staffer in the city council. He's no stranger to our body politic. He worked as a staffer for about 6 or 7 years. I always saw Phil working in the staff of the city council. And he has been elected for 14 years. He has served our city for 14 years as an elected official. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Phil Mendelson.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here. And second, I want to thank Franklin for hosting this. But really, I think his mother deserves it today. She did all the cooking. But she did all the cooking, so I kind of feel a little odd and humble. But thank you so much. Those of you who don't know much about me, I was first elected to the council, as Hector said, in 1998. And before that, I've been an ANC commissioner for 20 years. So I've been representing communities and really doing grassroots work for a very long time. And in fact, before I became an ANC commissioner, I was active in my tenant association, which was fighting to keep our apartment complex from being demolished. And that goes back a few years before I was elected. So grassroots has always been in my bones. I've been citywide since 1998, and in fact, I came here a little bit late because I was over in Congress Heights across the Anacostia River talking to folks there who wanted to know who the candidates were. My race for chairman, there is actually another person on the ballot. I'm number 2 on the ballot, and the ballot, you have to turn the page. Remember that, turn the page to vote, because there's definitely going to be a drop-off in votes. And some people say that, well, this is an easy election. I don't have to worry about it. I don't know. I mean, I think that as a candidate, I have a duty to come out and talk to people. I have a duty to come out and introduce myself and explain what my vision is for the city. And I have a duty to be available to answer questions. So I don't really care what the opposition, in terms of how serious or not serious they are, I have to take it seriously. We are talking about raising money, and I'm going to be a little brief about this at the beginning. Josh Gibson, who's over on the stairs, actually has the ability to take charge cards. The reason why we're trying to raise money, and we have cards here if you want to leave a check, is because we're trying to do a mailer at the end of the month. We're trying to actually do a couple of mailers. And that costs over $100,000, maybe even close to a couple of $100,000 to mail to voters, because there are a lot of voters in the general election. So we are asking for money, and any amount helps. Please, if you can, contribute either online or charge with Josh or by check. And that's what we're trying to do, is get our message out and a vision for the city. And what is my vision? Well, I care very much about the city. I'm personally invested in the city because my daughter's in the DC public schools. I want to see a first-class public school system. And I think that's easier said than done, but there's no reason why we shouldn't strive for a first-class public education system. All large cities, or I shouldn't say all, but most large cities in this country are struggling. You look at Detroit, you look at Cleveland, Washington, D.C. isn't any different than them. My view is, so what? Kids can learn, kids get educated all the time. And those kids who are falling through the cracks, we got to figure out the way to connect to them so that they can learn too. That's what our duty is, I think, as a society. Public education is a great leveler. It provides opportunity to everybody to achieve the American dream, and that's what we ought to be striving for. One initiative I've been pushing the Chancellor on and others in the government is to do better with truancy. Not to look at truancy as let's put up posters and tell kids who are in school to stay in school, but rather let's look at truancy as a way of identifying kids who are at risk and then understand why they're at risk. Kids aren't truant because they're getting straight A's. No, they're truant because there's something going on. It could be mental health. It could be trauma in the family. It could be that the kid's in the 7th grade and can't read past the 3rd grade. Whatever the reason is, truancy is a way of identifying the kid who's at risk. Then it's up to us to assess why they're at risk and then get them the right services. And if we look at social service delivery that way, I think we can reduce the demand on social services in the long term. Because if we're reaching these kids when they're still in school, they're not going to grow up to be adults who are requiring social services. We're going to provide the services one way or the other, and if we do it at the front end, it should be cheaper and easier, and the result will be kids who are productive members of society. Plus, our schools will be succeeding. You know, there's all this debate about charter versus DCPS. They're both failing in my view. The charters are, the proficiency level is something like 55%. When I took a test, it used to be you wanted to get over 90. Anyway, 55 wasn't acceptable. And DCPS is actually a little bit less than the charter schools. The other issue that I'm very concerned about with DCPS is the turnover among teachers and principals. Now I've been talking a lot about it, haven't done as much as I wanted to because it's been pretty busy for me down at City Hall. But what I learned at a hearing I had in July, a hearing which, by the way, the Washington Post criticized me for having, because he said the council shouldn't be running the schools. Well, I agree, but we still should be doing oversight, and I had a hearing and I invited people to come in, and one of the things I learned was that we have turnover. We get new teachers about 20 to 25% every year, year after year after year. And principals turnover about 20, 25% year after year after year. Now, we want to get rid of the bad teachers, and we want to get rid of the bad principals, but if you're constantly turning over your teachers and principals, you're not building a stable, experienced educational environment, which is what you need in the schools. You know, you can walk into a school that's doing well and you just feel it. I mean, it's so obvious. And you don't get that if you're constantly getting new principals and you're constantly getting new teachers. And so these are a couple of short-term strategies that I see. Truancy and the turnover, looking at the turnover. A couple of short-term strategies toward what should be the goal, which is not 7 to 10 years from now, maybe we get to 100% proficiency, but we push now to improve our schools and be better than the other large cities that are still struggling, leave them behind while we get a first-class public education system. I have chaired the Council's Judiciary Committee since 2005. If you look at my record there, you will see what my style is, which is one where I am generally independent thinking. I don't just do what the mayor says or what somebody else says, but I try to approach every issue from the standpoint of what is best for the city, what is best for getting the best in public safety, for example. So I've had a very positive relationship with Kathy Lanier, chief, the police chief, but at the same time, there are plenty of times when she's been angry at me because she doesn't like the oversight that I do. When she was in the news over the escorts, celebrity escorts, Charlie Sheen, oh, she was furious that I had a hearing. But the public was entitled to hear an explanation and to look at that situation more closely. And that's my view. It's not about gotcha, it's not about confrontation, but it's about using the council as a way of promoting accountability and also using oversight to press an agency director to do better. And I have a very good working relationship with Kathy Lanier. I think that's the way council members should do oversight, and that's the way I approach, and will push my colleagues as chairman to approach the oversight that each of the committees do, so that we end up getting a better product. We all have the same goal: public safety, public education, public health, and so forth. So I feel good about where we are with public safety. Violent crime continues to go down. Sometimes there are little bumps, like with robberies that have gone up this year, and I think we're going to turn the corner on that and see that continue to go down. We just opened up a state-of-the-art, first-class forensic science laboratory so that we can start doing our own analysis of forensic evidence from crime scenes, do our own DNA analysis, take back from the federal government where we contract out the drug analysis, start developing our own expertise for doing computer forensics. You know, when I became chair of the Public Safety Committee, the medical examiner had a backlog of over 1,000 autopsies that hadn't been done. They also sometimes were stacking up the dead bodies in the freezer, and all that's gone. We now have, as I said, a state-of-the-art facility, no backlogs. The medical examiner's office is this close to being nationally accredited. I mean, we really are doing some good stuff in the area of public safety. And that's what we ought to be doing with each of the core functions of government, whether it's public education or public safety or public health or public works. There's no reason why, as the nation's capital, we can't be the best in the model for all of this. The model because we get there under home rule, not because Congress, because as you know, if you pay attention, Congress doesn't help us at all. In fact, they kind of get in the way. I recognize that the council over the past year has destroyed the trust that citizens have in it. And I recognize that that's a challenge that we have to regain. There's not gonna be an easy solution to that. Some council members like to say, well, I'll just introduce a bill, we'll pass a bill, and that'll make everybody ethical. You know that that's not gonna make people ethical. Or we'll adopt a code of conduct, and that'll make us all behave better, and that doesn't do it. Rather, it's looking at little steps that we can take, myself leading by example, pressing my colleagues, sometimes gently, sometimes more gently than I'd like to. One of the press reporters today was criticizing me because I wasn't slamming a colleague in the news. That's not my style. And what's the benefit of slamming a colleague? Then we're just fighting amongst ourselves, which is pretty good for the newspapers, but it doesn't help produce a better council. What we need to do, the council members, and what I want as chairman, is to get the 13 of us working together toward being more accountable, more transparent, recognizing that we're not special. We are the people's branch, and that we need to be mindful that the people are offended when we act like we're somehow special, and that we need to just change our thinking, and that's where I want to push the council. The council a few years ago was very highly regarded, made Congress look bad, and now I sometimes wonder whether we're